I will click.
What's going on, Purple People podcast fans? Welcome. It is the week of the 2018 NFL Draft.
Woo!
Super excited about that. And I've got two other guys here super excited about it too. One by the name of Adam Carlson.
I made it this week.
Yeah. He's on time and looking good. And then I've got Kyle West,
who is also here this week and is excited for the draft because we are finally this. We talk about the draft so long that I just can't wait for it to finally be here.
Yeah.
Speaking of, this is episode number 299 of the Purple People podcast entitled Rough Draft. Pretty excited about it.
Yeah, Mr. Smith came up with that one. Not a lot of wit or pun on it, but it'll serve the purpose.
Yeah, I was looking for stuff online, trying to rip stuff off, but that one's kind of hard to work with.
Yeah, we do have some people showing up in the chat already. We got some midnight podcast hype from Eric Spencer. Jason Tavada is here saying he's dead tired, but he's going to try to hang in there. And yes, we're recording the show a little late, but we wanted to get this show out as early as possible because we want to try to hit out our next show as soon as we can after the draft. So if we can knock this one out of the way today, we can have next week's ready to go to talk about the players that the Vikings actually pick. So we're here early, and we're glad you guys could make it.
Yeah, no more guesswork, no more trying to figure out who we think the Vikings are going to draft. Next week, we will know. We will have a list of players.
And next week, we'll have our 2019 mock drafts to look at.
Yes.
Yes, we will. And Adam, next week, we will be at 300 episodes.
We will.
Next week is a big show for us.
If you'd have told me we'd be going 300 shows on this, I'd have punched myself in the face.
Yes, 100,000%.
But here we are, and we still don't have any real plan on stopping.
Nope.
Like they say, you guys fed me scraps, and I'm not going away now, so I'm your problem from here on out.
We like having you here, Mr. Smith.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, let's get started, guys. 299, rough draft. Let's go into some quick hits like we always do. Adam Thielen, number 21, and Stephon Diggs, number 32, ranked in the top 50 merchandise sellers of 2017. Spoiler alert, shocker. We have two great wide receivers, and they start getting some attention. It's kind of weird to say, though.
The weirdest thing about it is the last 3 years there was another player on this list that wore number 5 for Minnesota. And it's so strange when I wrote up my article not to include him because it felt like an annual thing.
No Donovan McNabb?
No McNabb jerseys in the mix. But it is strange for the Vikings to have the number 1 defense and not have a player in the top 50 merchandise sales. Of course, we all know that Adam Thielen became the first 1,000-yard receiver since Sidney Rice and his great story of coming up, local hometown hero kind of thing as well. So it's not really a big surprise to see him explode onto the charts at number 21 after not making a list last year, which is really cool. Stephon Diggs made a jump up to 32, and you got to kind of contribute a lot of that success to the Minneapolis Miracle because of, that was a big stage game, big time game, and the way he handled it sure put a spotlight right on him. So yeah, these two guys, they're something good.
Yeah, there were some folks who didn't like the way he acted after that catch. I don't think he was being cocky. Like, I'm totally okay with the spotlight being shined.
I'm fine with him being cocky. Be cocky.
Yeah, he could have been cocky too, but I thought that he handled himself really well. I mean, he was excited. He threw the helmet, whatever. I'd have thrown my helmet and took my pants off and ran around and done all kinds of shit if I would have been in his position.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's cool. I'm not surprised that he's on the list as well, and it's a really cool story for Adam Thielen. Who'd ever thought that he'd have been ranked as high as he was? Top 50 merchandise seller in the NFL for an undrafted kid from Minnesota. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's hard for those undrafted players to make a name for themselves. That's a touch of a spoiler alert for my number 2 Viking of all time. But we do have someone in the chat here. Eric Spencer says the reason why there's no defensive players on that list is because everyone already owns those jerseys. And I got to admit, when living in Minnesota here, I see a lot of Harrison Smith jerseys. There are quite a few. There are some Kyle Rudolphs as well, but not as many as there are Diggs go around. If you right now, if you see a Vikings jersey, there's a good chance it's a Diggs.
Yeah, that's pretty common. But like I said, and you guys were talking about it being cocky or whatever. You know what? It might have been a little cocky, but when you have a moment that big, not just for Minnesota, the whole football community, that's all they talked about the next week. You're just going to bask in the glory, and I have no wrong against that. Just soak that moment in, because he was the hero of the day. The game was over, but he capitalized, and he'll be remembered forever. So,
absolutely.
That's relatable for anyone who's played any kind of sports as a kid, whether it be dodgeball or kickball or whatever. Like, don't you always want that moment where you win the game for your team? And dude got to have that on like the highest professional level possible in the NFL. Come on, dude. Like, do whatever you want. I don't care. just don't do it on a love boat, and we'll be fine.
Kyle would take his pants off, so I think Stephon handled it really well.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys take this next one because I don't know this guy, but this sounds cool.
You want to grab it, Mr. West?
Sure. Keith Millard will announce the Vikings' second-round draft pick. Adam, offensive lineman, correct?
Defensive lineman.
Defensive lineman. Shoot, I was close.
Big fella, talented too. One of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. Keith Millard made the announcement on his Twitter account saying that he's very honored to be able to announce the Vikings' second-round draft pick, and he remembers what it was like on draft day to be a college kid waiting to have his name called and knowing how special that is to all these players making the jump to the professional level. Millard's always been one of those guys that completely understands it. And for him to announce the Vikings' second-round pick, I see that as being pretty fitting and honoring. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I always enjoy when they jazz it up a little bit and bring back the former players, let them announce some picks, and I think it's fun.
Yeah, second round's usually when they do a lot of that fun stuff. First round, Roger Goodell gets all the action, and then second round they'll bring in the former players for the franchise, and maybe a special guest or two, and of course third day is where all the fun happens.
Third day, I don't think anyone is going to beat third day the Tampa Bay Buccaneers having
a
parrot.
A parrot is going to deliver the Tampa Bay Buccaneers day 3 pick.
That is going to win the internet. That is amazing.
I'm excited
I think
for it.
The 49ers pick when the Stormtrooper and Chewbacca and all those Star Wars characters come out to do that, their pick on live from San Francisco. That's going to be interesting too. Didn't really expect.
I don't know, dude.
But to me, Oakland just trolling all their fans by doing their pick from Vegas is amazing.
It's going to happen. So, but we were talking about this. We're talking about this in the other teams because it relates to us about the second round draft pick and the third. The U.S. men's curling team will announce a draft pick on day 3. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the gold medal winning men's curling team that won it in Pyeongchang is how you pronounce it, right? The Winter Olympics in 2018?
Sure.
We'll go with that. I
got to admit, I'm not an Olympic watcher, so that's pretty interesting. But also, I do want to say that the men's curling team will be at Fan HQ signing autographs here in Minnesota the same day they're going to announce the draft pick. So that's kind of cool, too.
Very cool. You going to get some autographs from him, Adam?
Sadly, I'll be watching the draft and doing analysis, so I don't think I'm going to make it.
Opportunity for you, though.
But it would have been kind of cool to meet some gold medalists.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad. I'll be missing I won't be missing it. We have band practice on Thursdays, so I'm going to watch it while we play Metallica songs. So I guess that's a win for me, but I would rather be drinking beer and having wings.
Jason Tavade remembers when E.J. Henderson announced our second-round draft pick. And E.J. Henderson is always active in the community with so many great football camps for kids and charitable organizations. That's just so cool. Yang Yaj says the true number 75 for the Vikings, Keith Millard. Gotta love that love.
Does EJ still work for the Vikings?
I don't believe he is technically on their payroll, but I know he associates them with them pretty often.
Okay.
We got some stuff in the chat here talking about how Green Bay is not very good at drafting, and I think that has changed now with the new shifts in the front office there. I think Green Bay is going to get a little bit better at their drafting.
You think so? I hope not. Screw them.
I mean, I hope not as well, but I agree with Adam. They've definitely shifted things around from something that's been in place for decades. And it brings a lot of question to the table in a lot of other areas, too. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to retire a Packer now because they're doing a lot of stuff without his consent, without letting him know, letting players go, letting coaches go that he's involved with. But I do think that they're trying to do the right thing. I hope they don't. Just being spiteful, but we'll see. I'm with Adam on that one.
How much money do you think Aaron Rodgers could make on the open market? Like, if that was to ever happen,
if that happened, some team would give up 5 first-round picks for him.
He could probably buy the rest of ownership in the Milwaukee Bucks if he wanted.
It's true.
Yeah.
He's a minority owner now, so who knows?
But enough about that little fun-loving guy. Bet Online has the Vikings over/under win total at the 2018 season for 10.5. I like this because there's only been 2 instances that I can remember in my lifetime of watching football of a 10-plus win team not going to the playoffs, and that would be the Matt Castle-led 11-5 New England Patriots because they didn't win out in their division, and there was a 10-6 team not too long ago. I forget who it was. Maybe the Ravens? I'm not sure on that, but they didn't make it as well. Kind of got edged out, but that's a good win total. I think that's at least a wild card spot, and I'm okay with that as long as we get in.
So 10-win season, the Vikings draw in week 17 and land right on that 10.5, right?
Yeah, there we go. We got a rough schedule, so I think that's a kind of an accurate prediction.
There is that stretch that does look pretty rough, but there are also some games like where it is going to be challenging that the Vikings have a little bit of extra time, like when they have the long week, I believe, heading into Philly, which is nice. I think they have 10 days after that Rams game.
We got
but playing the Rams on short week is not going to be nice. So, of course, there's always that give and take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got lucky again with a good bye week right in the middle of the season. That's what you get when you win the division. You go 13-3, you're going to play a lot of good teams. But I don't know. I like that. I like the 10-5. That's a good prediction. Hopefully it's over, but I don't think that's out of the realm of reality.
No, I'm still waiting to see because there are still some holes on this roster that I think need to be filled before the season starts. And until they do that, I'm not really willing to put a number down as far as wins that I see in the Vikings' future because I can't take Marcus Sherrills as cornerback 4 seriously. I can't do it.
You guys know how I feel. I always say you have to at least wait until after the draft before you start assigning numbers to teams because you still don't know what teams are going to do in the draft and how that will affect rosters. And then sometimes, hey, a running back falls and another team will release a veteran. And so maybe someone else in your division can pick up players that you didn't expect them to have before. So you still really don't know until, the draft and then a little ways afterwards. So we'll see. But 10 seems very likely for this unit. It's a difficult schedule, though.
Yeah, considering that this is a team that is on the rise, and they lost some key pieces during the offseason, but they also were able to fill some great pieces too. So, and they were able to get some long-term deals done to help the longevity of the franchise. So all in all, you can't really complain too much. However, there are a lot of reports out there that are showing the Vikings salary cap that they have remaining, but it doesn't take into account the draft signings and some of the carryover money. So it isn't really the number that they're putting out there. Still, I'd like to see that either saved to go into extending the contract of some Vikings player or, just I don't know. I don't see the point in spending it right now on a player that isn't really going to improve the team too much. You don't got to go out there and throw $12 million at Des Bryant.
No, gotta have that emergency money throughout the season as well, too, in case disaster should strike, like what we've seen happen before. That you gotta have that money in case you need it.
Gravy's been asking in the chat if we would trade the Vikings' first-round draft pick for a second and third, and of course, all that depends on which numbers those are in the draft, how much they're giving up, who's on the board. That's such a loaded question; it's so hard to answer. And of course, yeah, you'd want more picks. But at this point, if there is a really good cornerback or offensive lineman on the board, you pull the trigger.
You got to pull the trigger. It all depends. If you're only falling back, a couple positions, four positions maybe in the draft, and you feel that you have a choice between two corners that you've got graded similar, and you can drop back a few positions and you'll get one of the two players plus some extra picks, you do it. But boy, that is really dependent on the situation. So you've got to get into the specifics of the moment for it as to whether or not that would be a good pick.
I'm always a fan of having more picks, but if it means missing out on a prospect that you think could really be great for the franchise, you can't do it.
Remember what we've been saying the last couple of weeks, too. That's a great question. But after the first round, I believe the fifth-year option goes away. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah.
Yang Ya is not a big fan of Josh Allen. Says big arm, no accuracy.
Man, I hope the Browns don't mess that up. Oof.
Oh, they will. It's Cleveland. Come on.
Eric Spencer asks a question that Adam Patrick actually posed on the Viking Age today. Adam Patrick said that the Vikings need to draft a quarterback in this draft no matter what. And Eric Spencer wants to know our opinions on the Vikings taking a late-round quarterback this year.
I say not this year, next year. I think you've got it. You're fine for right now. But next year, I could see them taking that mid to late round quarterback to try to develop.
See, Trevor Siemian, capable backup. You've got your starting quarterback in place. Kyle Sloter, the Vikings are very high on him. Mm-hmm. They like him a lot. And I think they're going to feel really comfortable with him at quarterback 3. And if they do draft someone, it's going to be someone they hope they can slide onto the practice squad. So I don't think, even if they do draft a quarterback, I don't think it's going to be someone that's going to have a major impact. Not this year, maybe not even next year.
Let's not do the New York Jets thing and have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. It's a great question, but I'm with Kyle. Next year, even though on paper, now that says a lot because that's a 50-50 shot at what will happen actually in the year, but on paper, we're pretty solid mostly everywhere. But I don't see quarterback being a need because we have 3 in place. And at each tier that they're at, Adam said we have our solidified starter, we have a decent backup, just like we had last year, and then we have an emergency. I would rather have that maybe to a great special teams player or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gravy's talking about the depth on the offensive line, says we've signed Tom Compton and Josh Andrews as depth. Right now, you got to believe that the starter penciled in where Joe Berger was is Danny Isadora. So, yes, offensive line may not be as huge of a need as a lot of people are putting it out there to be. As a matter of fact, I released an article with my 5 bold predictions for the Vikings draft, where I said some things that a lot of people really didn't care for, and I laid out pretty well about why the Vikings should go all in on a corner instead of an offensive lineman in round 1. The thing is, and I'll give away a little bit of what I said in the article, but there are so many talented linemen in this draft that can play multiple spots, and there's just so many bodies that the Vikings can bring in. Meanwhile, the cornerback situation in this draft is not nearly as deep, and you're going to end up waiting and getting a player that's significantly worse than if you were to wait for an offensive lineman to go to the second round.
Spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about those positions later. But yes, I agree. It's going to be based off of value at the pick. It's going to be based off the depth of this draft at the position. I think those are interchangeable. I think we've talked about this many times in the last month or so. The top 3 needs is depth at D tackle, offensive line depth, and depth at corner. Like I said earlier, we have our starters, but eventually we're going to need, number 1, guys to develop, and maybe even guys that might be starters at the end of this year or next year, because guys like Terrence Newman, they're not going to be around much longer. How many years in a row are we going to say, well, Marcus Sherrills won't make the roster? I'm with you on that. I think a corner in round 1 makes perfect sense.
Jason Tavade in the chat, do you guys think Mike Remmers is going to go to guard this season? I still am in the camp that this is a smokescreen. I think that they're trying to put out there that they're going to be looking for an offensive tackle when they're really looking for an interior lineman. The Vikings threw so much money at Mike Remmers that it wouldn't really make a ton of sense to throw him in at right guard. or even left guard, which is where he played at the end of last season. I just don't see how when Mike Remmers was so successful at right tackle last year, and I know that there are a lot of fans that didn't like the way he played at a lot of games when he was going against a really tough pass rush, but there are going to be those rough games, but he was really a disappointment when he was plugged into the middle of the offensive line. So I'm hoping that's not the case. But if it is, the Vikings really need to get serious about getting an offensive tackle. And if they really are moving Remmers on to the inside, they are going to need to trade up to get a good offensive tackle.
I didn't like when they started messing with the offensive line for no real reason late in the season last year. That was a big mistake to me. I think you got to keep him at right tackle. Like you said, based on what you're paying him, and I thought that he played fine at that position. I don't know why they started messing around with it.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I just don't want Rashad Hill being the starting tackle. He's a great backup. He's a great interchangeable piece.
Right.
I don't want him starting at right tackle. I watched the video today. It was a bunch of people sitting around. It's mock draft season, and it's the week of the draft, and they would go down. There's probably 7 or 8 people at the table. I know Maurice Jones-Drew was there, one of them. There was a female with blonde hair. Can't remember her name. She's not one of the known female analysts for NFL and ESPN, but she said, well, I think they're going to go tackle because I think that Mike Remmers and Riley Reif did great during the playoffs. And I was like, what? No. Mike Remmers was a guard. She's like, yeah, they were pretty exceptional all year to include the postseason. My head just, I could feel the smoke coming out of my ears. So I'm glad to hear you guys back that up to say we want him where he was supposed to be and originally paid to play because, like I said, Rashad Hill's a great backup, but...
Yeah, I like him as a backup swing tackle. I don't really want him starting.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been running down through the draft and going off and answering you guys' questions in the chat. Let's get these last couple of quick hits in so we can get on these main topics.
I love the questions, though. That's been good
they're
stuff.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We love interacting with you guys. Round 1 of the draft is on Thursday, available on Fox, NFL Network, and ESPN. I'm not sure of the time. It's usually around 7 or 8 Eastern.
If you head on over to the Viking Age, I already put out an article. There are several apps, streaming devices, and places you can watch free, even if you don't have any cable or television networks at all, that you can watch online for free with the draft. So head on over. It's on the Viking Age. If you've got the Viking Age app, just scroll through and you'll see the article. There's a big old list of places you can watch the draft, and there's no real excuse in missing out. Heck, some people even just follow along on Twitter during the draft, because sometimes that's a pretty crazy place to see some of the reactions.
Probably the quickest way to get your news, too.
I don't like going on Twitter because usually the picks are announced there before they are on TV, and I like watching it play out.
First round, I will watch first round on television, but then when we get into round 2 and onward, just give me Twitter. I don't need the pageantry of a round 3 draft pick. I don't care.
Well, I care. Millard and the parrot.
Well, the parrot, okay, that's entertaining. But you know what I mean, though.
You got to have the parrot.
I'm going to watch for the parrot. I didn't know about this, but now that you guys told me about it, I will be tuning in at some point to watch the parrot. And this parrot's got a lot of expectation to live up to, so he better knock it out of the park.
That's true. We're hyping this parrot pretty hard.
So we're ending the quick hits on a rather sad note. Kind of frustrating, but I'm not too upset about it. It happens. Linebacker Kentrell Brothers has been suspended for the first 4 games of the season. If you haven't heard, he violated the league's policy on performance-enhancing substances. It's unfortunate, but we have a lot of great high-character guys, as they say, on this team. I'm sure it'll be something that Mike Zimmer will talk to him about. He'll bounce back, and that's what I'm hoping because we have those kind of players on the team. We had Michael Floyd come in at Game 5 last season because he had some hiccups as well. They'll bounce back. They'll do great. And he's a good piece of the defense. So,
yeah, Brothers, although he doesn't really see the football field on defense very often, he is a very solid contributor on special teams. And I'd hate to see him lose his spot with the Vikings because of something like this.
I'm going to read the statement that he put out. It's on Twitter. He said, I've been informed by the NFL that I will face a 4-game suspension for my PED use. While it was not my intention to violate any league policies, I understand it is up to me to be aware of what goes into my body, and I take full responsibility for that. I sincerely apologize to the Vikings organization, my teammates, and our fans for my mistake. I take my job as a professional seriously, and I will continue to support my teammates during this time. So
it's about as genuine as he can get, I think.
Yeah, I believed it. He told me the Kool-Aid and I drank it. So do what you got to do, serve that suspension. Maybe he'll fight it and get it reduced. We'll see. And we'll be happy to have him back.
Absolutely.
I don't know, kind of like Joe Rogan. I was listening to his podcast. He was talking about like martial arts guys taking like juice and whatever, taking shit. And he's like, at the end of the day, you still got to work out. Like it's not like you just get to take it and you're like, oh hey, I'm buff now. Like you still got to go to the gym and work out. So I mean, I get it. And these guys take so many supplements, and I'm sure the list of banned substances from the NFL has got to be a mile long. It could very well be he took something that was by mistake.
The same
absolutely.
thing happened for Carolina Panthers linebacker Thomas Davis. He's a huge name in the NFL. He's a great defensive star. And he said that it's something he's been taking for years and the NFL has known about, and now he's all of a sudden suspended.
Yeah, now he got flagged for it.
Yeah, he got flagged for it too, and he was like, I'm very caught off guard because the NFL is aware of this. So like you said, that list is probably 2 or 3 pages long. I don't know how these players' kidneys and livers don't shut down for all the stuff. But I'm not mad at Kentrell for it. It's not like this is a guy's a repeat offender, and I understand that mistakes happen. We've all made mistakes here on the show. And like I said, you just support the guy. Like, hey, come back strong.
Yep.
We have Eric Spencer in the chat saying, are people overlooking the fact that the Vikings desperately need pass rush depth? The starters wore down as the season went on. And I'm going to say, I don't think it's as desperate as you think it is. As you know, I understand that Brian Robinson's going to have a decreased role. Danielle Hunter's going to have a chance to have a massive payday if he has even a decent season this year. Everson Griffin's coming off a great campaign where he started out on fire, getting a lot of sacks, but still ended up with a lot of pressures over the season. But I am still kind of high on Tashawn Power.
Yeah, me too.
Also, to back up what you said, Everson Griffin was battling some injuries at the latter part of the year, too. He was a little banged up. So, not to worry. I think they're going to be fine. But that's one of the places that I had personally digging in through all the notes and the players that I think they're going to address the depth at there
has to be a little bit of concern. There's got to be some concern that Brian Robinson might hang it up after this year. There's got to be concern that they can't get a deal done with Danielle Hunter. And I understand the concern of both those situations because right now I don't know if I would be able to say that Tashawn Bauer can be the starting end opposite Everson Griffin. I can't say that.
I think they're going to address that in the draft. The D-line is definitely going to be something to be looked at.
But I think that's going to be more of a mid-round pick. I think we're going to see round 5, something like that.
Absolutely.
Personally, I think you're going to have to pry B-Rob from this locker room. I don't think he's ever going to retire.
As long as we keep getting 96 questions.
Yeah, oh, my God, please. Somebody's got to take that over when he's gone. That's one of my favorite things throughout the year.
Jason Tavade wants Dallas Goedert at number 30 overall. He said tight end would be enticing.
I can't. I can't. I'm sorry, man. If you haven't listened to the last couple of shows, and that's great for the input. No, Kirk Cousins thrived a lot with two tight end set in Washington. We got bigger fish to fry at 30 overall.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to just be ass backwards, and they're going to draft a tight end. Because that's our luck. Right?
Wouldn't that be something?
Three quarters of the time is the percentage I'll give Slick Rick for doing the right thing. He's had a couple of bad first rounds, but most of all, they've been pretty good. God, I hope we don't take a tight end first. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand pass rusher. I could understand defensive tackle. Corner, of course, is what I'm saying should be first round. Offensive lineman could be the pick, but tight end, it's just...
It's not really a necessity in my eyes as the first couple of rounds.
Such a luxury pick it would be.
Mm-hmm. Unless the number 1 tight end is sitting there and he should have been gone by pick 20 or 21 and he's there at 30, then I could see the Vikings pulling the trigger, but there's bigger needs that we need to fill in. Let's jump right in, though. Let's go to this main topic this week. We're going to talk about our number 2 Vikings of all time. Pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I already hinted a little bit about mine being an undrafted player, and it isn't because he didn't declare for the draft. He just got passed over throughout the entire event. Out of Nebraska, it is Mick Tingelhoff.
Solid
Ooh.
choice.
And I understand that having Mick Tingelhoff at number 2 is a bit of a, he's not a skill player. Because who was that you were saying, Mr. Smith, said that you can't have superstars on the offensive line?
I'm going to throw my headset right now. That made me so angry. I was listening to the Pro Football Talk podcast because I feel every day for a little bit of information about me, guys. If I have downtime or time at work where I'm on a computer or if I'm driving, I am just consuming as much football information as I can from everywhere. And the main host, he's got an accent. It sounds like he's from overseas, maybe in Europe somewhere. And he said, I don't believe that you can call someone a superstar if they don't touch the ball every single play. And I think that's just freaking absurd. That just because you don't touch the ball doesn't mean you're not a superstar.
Mick touched the ball on every play.
That's a solid. See, that's a catch-22 there. He definitely did. But
17 years in the NFL, 6-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, deserved both of more of those. Ring of Honor player, number 53, retired, 50 greatest Vikings. It's really amazing that he's been able to have the career he does, especially with starting 240 consecutive games. That was its second in franchise history behind only Jim Marshall at 270.
And that was back when the Vikings were playing in the snow.
It's true.
Yeah.
And Fran Tarkenton himself said that he did not feel like it wasn't the Vikings if Mick Tingelhoff was not around. And for him to say something like that, because for a lot of people, Fran Tarkenton is the face of Vikings past.
Uh-huh.
And I completely understand that. But for him to come out, and I believe that he also introduced Mick Tingelhoff at the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which, again, pretty awesome.
Correct.
It's just been so cool. And he waited, 36 years to get in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, he waited a very long time. I got to watch what you were talking about. I got to watch Fran induct him in because he's just getting up there in age, and he was having someone else speak for him, which was totally cool of Fran to do because Fran's still he's still really young at heart. So that was
32 years. I just did the math in my head.
Nice.
32 years he waited to get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's a long time.
That process is a little skewed, but that's fine.
That's crazy.
Kyle,
could you imagine if Chris Carter would have had to wait 32 years?
32 years.
Pull my list out here. Since I wasn't on the show last week, I'm actually going to double down very briefly and do my number 3 and my number 2. My number 3 was Carl Eller.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and number 2 for this week, I picked Mr. Fran Tarkenton, the quarterback of, like you said, really the face of the Vikings of old. I guess is how you would describe it. When you think of historic Minnesota Vikings, I really think Fran Tarkenton. He is just that guy for this team. There's a reason why his jersey number has been retired. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Vikings Ring of Honor. Super smart guy. If you ever get a chance to listen to him talk, Fran Tarkenton's favorite subject is Fran Tarkenton. But there's a reason for that because he was that talented. This guy was Russell Wilson in an era where players just did not play like that. Like you said, Adam, I wish that his career was split. He was with the Vikings. He was with the Giants. He came back to the Vikings. That's kind of a little odd. I wish that he would have had more of a lengthy career with Minnesota. But hey, it is what it is. Fran is the man for this team, and we all love him.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's all good choices, and we all have different picks.
Hey-o.
Adam's not going to be a fan of this week and next week, but that's fine. Because they didn't spend their entire career, or most of it, with Minnesota. But when I think of all-time greatest Vikings, number 2 overall for me is none other than Mr. Straight Cash Homie himself, Randy Moss.
Woo!
Man, that guy changed football. It was crazy. Like I said, he spent time with Oakland, New England, Tennessee. He came back with us in his last year. He got to play in a Super Bowl with San Fran. He played in the Super Bowl with New England in that crazy good year. But for the Vikings, I'm looking at the stats right here. 92 touchdowns of Minnesota, When we get into the playoffs, I mean, good God, he's got a ton there. He's thrown some touchdowns. A little off the field stuff, that's why I don't put him number one. But he backed up all the talk that he had for most of the time that he played. And every time that he played for Minnesota, it was exciting. Just overall for me, I'm glad to see that he got into the Hall of Fame last year. First ballot, too, which was kind of surprising that since a guy like T.O. had to wait forever. But he's my number 2 all time, and he was very, very, very fun to watch.
Go back to that Thanksgiving Day game where he torched the Dallas Cowboys.
I watched that recently. I don't know if I told you guys that. And I saw on the sideline, the cornerbacks coach at the time was Mike Zimmer. And he's just over there with the most confused, pissed off, and just, I don't know what to do. Look, talking to his corners. Like, I told you this was going to happen.
That game in particular, they're just playing backyard football. They're just throw the ball up for Randy. Just throw it deep and just let him. You can't cover him. You could not cover him in that game. In that season in particular, it did not matter. It just didn't matter, dude.
He had 156 touchdowns in his career. He was the Rookie of the Year for 1998, 6-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro. I mean, he's just ridiculously good.
Yeah. Randy had his problems off the field, on the field sometimes as well too. Some of the stuff that he said is a little tough to defend. But I think you look overall at his career and it got him to the Hall of Fame. And so just a damn good player for the Vikings.
Yeah, my only knock, like I've said before, is that he wasn't 100% effort player.
Yeah.
If he knew the ball wasn't coming his way, he wasn't given a lot of effort. Mm-hmm. Which is okay.
Which, I mean, I did hear Chris Carter, the way Chris Carter described it is that if you give, and this sounds terrible, but he's being honest, if you give 100% on every play, when you're running that far down the field, you're going to be dead by halftime. So you have to save yourself. You have to jog every now and then.
Adam Thielen don't.
It was just more prominent. It was just more prominent when Randy did it. But whatever, dude.
Oh, there's no denying though the number of big plays he's had, the extreme excitement, and the fact that him and Culpepper together were able to create such an exciting offense to bring so many fans to the Vikings is so cool. Jason Tavade in the chat again wants to know if you're going to a draft party, and if so, what kind of food items should there be at a draft party?
Buffalo Wild Wings?
There's got to be buffalo chicken dip.
Oh,
that's a cornerstone. And I like sweet tea if I'm not drinking a good beer, but a light beer just to sip on throughout. I don't really care. If there's food in front of me, I'm probably going to eat it. So I don't really care. I'm not very picky.
No, you're going to want beer. You're going to want chips. You're going to want pizza. You're going to want all the usual fixins for a party. You're going to want chicken wings. I guess it all depends on the number of people you're having. If you're having a big old block party, you might as well fix up everything you got and throw it out there because it's going to get eaten. Or flipped over, I guess, depending on whatever pick gets made.
Now I'm hungry.
Christian ponders the pick. Macaroni and cheese goes flying.
Oh, God. Oof. I'm so glad we don't have to worry about that for a couple years.
In that moment, we were all kind of excited. Weren't we? A little bit.
I mean, at the time, if we didn't know that it was going to go into the shitter that later on in his career, then
I admit I was sitting there. I was like, okay, I understand the pick. I don't really love it a lot, but he can prove me wrong.
Hey, Vikings got a quarterback. Woo!
Yeah, that happened. That did happen. But at least the Vikings don't have to draft another quarterback early for another 3 years now, hopefully. So fingers crossed.
I am really hoping that Kirk Cousins sticks by he wants to retire in Minnesota. Like, I don't want to be in the situation where we're renting him for 3 years.
Oh, Jason, don't go buy your buffalo chicken dip. You got to make that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not that tough to make. It's only a few ingredients. Google that and make it up. It's good. So
you got to go for the guacamole dip.
I think guac's a little overrated, especially for a draft party, but I know that I'm going to get a lot of people looking at me like I'm insane, but a little bit of guac will do you good. A lot of guac will not be as great.
Yeah, I'm more on just the avocado myself, but guac's all right.
All right, so the chat appears to have a fewer questions here, which is okay. It also gives us time to talk a little bit about the draft and some of the prospects we really like. And I know I revealed a little bit earlier that I believe the Vikings should be looking at a cornerback in this draft. And of course, some of the top corners are going to be gone. There's not going to be a chance that Minnesota lands, the top corner in the draft when it's just not really going to be possible. But there are some players that might not be on the board when the Vikings are at 30 that could be kind of interesting. Isaiah Oliver from Colorado is one of them.
I was thinking we could fake a video and put a mask on with the player name underneath it to try to make him fall to Minnesota.
Oh no.
And I'm kidding.
Put on a gas mask bong and pretend to be someone else.
Yeah, try to get them to fall to Minnesota.
What a fantastic reference.
Good old Laramie Tunsil.
That wasn't me, man. Somebody hacked my stuff.
But I like Isaiah Oliver out of Colorado. He's a little over 6 foot tall. He's got game. He's got some confidence. He's got awareness. He's got that speed to close in. He not as great at wrapping up as he should be, but I think that is something that he's not going to be able to get away with under Mike Zimmer. So if Isaiah Oliver starts to slip to the Vikings, I could actually see them wanting to trade up to grab him if they get the opportunity to do so. Another one that might be kind of interesting, and although he's undersized, I think that being undersized for nickel corner isn't terrible. Dante Jackson's going to get some knocks because of his size. He's only 5'10 and a half, which that's going to scare some teams away, especially in a league where wide receivers can be crazy tall and these pass catching tight ends are just machines. But he's going to take some time to develop. And I think that if they brought him in now and if they were to bring back Terrence Newman or have a little bit more depth to have him as a cornerback 5, I think he could really kind of develop into being a really good player.
Those are solid picks, man. I'm going to go transition to mine if you guys want to talk about those. There's 2 guys that I've picked out. There's a handful of names you could pick out of these positions. But I'm going to piggyback. Haven't done this in a long time. And I'm going to mirror what Adam did. I'm going to go with the corner as well. I don't know that he'll be there at 30, but if he is, I think the trigger has to be pulled. Maybe even if they start to see him fall, maybe jump up a spot or 2. I'm not sure, but I like this guy. I think it's the higher ceiling of what could resemble a better Trey Waynes, and I'm a fan of Trey Waynes. He has his quirks here and there, but Louisville cornerback Jair Alexander. He's built like Trey Waynes. He's 5'11", about 192. His best season was a couple years ago when he was a junior. He had 5 passes intercepted, not last season, but the season before last. He's got great speed. You guys are going to love that. I think he ran a 4.38 at the combine, so he's super fast. That's why he reminds me of Trey Waynes. I know Waynes can have some problems with the hip sometimes, but he's done a lot of catching up. Specifically, I'm thinking about the Tampa Bay game last year where he shut down a touchdown to Deshaun Jackson, which is great. And he's been well-suited for a lot of teams, but our team is one of the ones that is listed that he could go to. Like I mentioned before, the reason I'm high on this guy, I think he's Trey Waynes with a bigger ceiling. And I love the quote from him here. I got this from Pro Football Weekly, and it stood out to me, and I absolutely love the confidence this dude has. He says, "I'm a dog out on the field. I'm a savage. You turn on the film, and you'll see it. I bring energy, I compete, and I'm a motivator." He's like, you very rarely see a pass getting caught on me. A pass getting caught on me is almost history in the making.
I hate – it's weird because on offense, I don't like cocky players, but as corners, I need my corners being cocky.
Absolutely.
Oh, you got to have that. Gotta have that.
Alexander is good. He's a really interesting player. I think he's going to drop a little bit because of some of his injury history in college, missing some games last year because of his hand and his knee. I think that a lot of teams might see him as being a bit banged up, and but like you said, the elite level of speed. He plays much bigger than he is. Alexander could be really good in this defense. But there are some players that just probably won't be there. Mike Hughes will probably be gone by the time that the Vikings are on the clock. Denzel Ward will be long gone.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was saying before, these aren't that many names, which is why I'm kind of pushing for the Vikings to make a corner their first pick, because there just isn't that depth at the position. Once you get past the first and second layer of corners, it really dips. There's a significant drop off.
It's very rare, too, to nail a player later in the rounds that can start and be that awesome, like a Josh Norman type. He was one of the later rounds. I don't think he was a first or a second. And it's rare to find somebody like that at such a volatile position. So I'm hoping he's there. If he's there at 30, I wouldn't be mad at this pick at all.
No, and as me and Smith both said, we would not cry any tears if a top corner prospect starts falling and the Vikings say, hey, we're going to go up and get him. I would not be sad one bit.
You can never have enough corners. I don't care if you're set with 2 Pro Bowlers on each side of the field. And if a corner falls in the draft that you think is that good, you draft him.
I like Mackenzie Alexander. I feel he's still growing and developing. He took some great strides last year. I'm a bigger fan of Trey Waynes than most people are. Mm-hmm. And Xavier Rhodes you can't go wrong with. But past that, you can't feel comfortable.
Nope. And it's just what you said, God forbid an injury happened to one of those guys. Then you're going to be scrounging. And then the defense or the offensive player and the quarterbacks, the coordinators, the coach, everybody knows who they're going to pick on. So, and
I'm going to disagree with Eric Spencer in the chat. He says being cocky hasn't helped Mackenzie Alexander, and I'll say it sure has.
Yeah, he's slowly improved.
I think he's taking his lumps, and I think he's learning, but he still hasn't given up that attitude. And you got to go on the field saying you ain't getting nothing on me.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, too, is I like cocky players. Confidence, and cockiness can be a borderline of which one you teeter on. But it means you play with a purpose and a chip on your shoulder, as a lot of people say. When you have motivation and you have a purpose to be out there, I love it. I'd rather you see you go out and try and get burned, but you tried your best and maybe take plays off or something like that. That would concern me.
Yeah, because the worst kind of players to have on the field is like an Albert Hainsworth, who was not motivated jack or shit on the field.
They don't have that passion. They don't have that commitment. They're just there to collect their money. Yeah. I don't know. We have cancer. I'm not familiar with this name in the chat. Joseph Robinson might be a new guy or maybe someone that's been hanging out, but good to have you here. Mm-hmm. He says 3 things for a great team: get a quarterback, protect the quarterback, and get to the quarterback.
That's great.
Yes.
That's very solid.
Absolutely. And if you can have a secondary that can buy that little more time there for the defense to get to that quarterback, it's always that trade-off. Your pass rush will help out your corners by helping getting to the quarterback, disrupting some throws. Your corners can buy some time, make the quarterback change their plays to let that defensive line get to them. It's really just so symbiotic, that relationship. And having Mike Zimmer there to drop some of these really interesting plays after having so many years of just bland cover 2 and base defense, it's so nice.
Oh, well, I've got one more for you guys if you're ready. And
go for it.
Nobody I've mentioned before. So I overheard a conversation when I was eating this weekend and started talking football with a random person down here in Texas. And I'm hoping that this guy is around because after I watched him play and knowing his story, I would be ecstatic to have him to the line. Notre Dame offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, 6'8", 309 pounds, is humongous. Fun fact of the day, he is Matt Ryan's cousin, which is crazy. But he's in a football family. He's a 4-star prospect. He's from Philly. The upsides to this guy, he used to be a former tight end, so he plays football and he loves it. He was a prep hoops player. He's very athletic. He doesn't waste a lot of his steps. He keeps his feet moving when he has contact. That was probably the thing that I noticed the most and I really enjoyed. And he's sneaky powerful. I'm really excited. And I'm looking on Pro Football Weekly again, and they go down to the bottom for best suited destinations. And guess who the first team is there?
Minnesota.
Well, let's take a look at McGlinchey because he is something unique in that he played both left and right tackle in college, and he can transition to the inside at either guard spot in the NFL.
God, this has Rick Spielman wrote all over it.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. McGlinchey would fill a need pretty much wherever the Vikings needed, making him a really interesting pick, but I also believe that he's going to be higher on the board of a lot of teams than I think a lot of people are expecting. Meanwhile, more one-dimensional players are going to fall. And I think that's where the Vikings are going to be able to find more value in the second round instead of the first. But if they do get a first and McGlinchey's on the board, it's got to be a consideration.
That's the one thing, a good thing you mentioned there too, Adam. He's athletic, he's versatile, he's a great blocker. He's got mass appeal limited upside, which means he's not really great at one specific thing, but he's good at many things, which is awesome. So
Eric Spencer wants to know what drugs you're on to think that Mike McGlinchey will fall that far.
That's just hopeful, and no drugs for me because drugs are bad. Okay,
Rainbows and unicorns are the best drugs.
I'm high on life, Eric.
He says that he'll probably be a top 15 pick because there aren't very many good defensive tackles in this class.
I know
good offensive tackles in this class.
Go in the top 10 because he's the only surefire non-bust. I forget his name, Quentin Nelson, I think it is. He's definitely a top 10, but
yep.
I'm just hoping there's a lot of shuffling. We've seen great players slip. I mean, Aaron Rodgers slipped to 25, so I'm hoping something can come our way. But I was just looking on both sides of the ball there.
Yeah, there are going to be those players that just stand out to you. And I'm sure Vikings fans would love to see Derwin James next to Harrison Smith in the secondary, but we got to be realistic and say that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give up the bank and giving up our currency, as they call it, for picks to trade up and get a guy. I don't want that to happen.
Now, as much as we'd love for some of these, the more high-profile players to fall to Minnesota, we got to kind of be happy that the Vikings aren't picking – first, second, third, fourth, like they have been in the past during times. I'm happy that the Vikings are being successful and having some later picks. I don't know, Mr. West, have you been paying attention to any of the prospects, or are you waiting to see who ends up in a Vikings uniform?
I've been slacking off this year. I haven't really done much looking at draft prospects. So I'm really looking forward to Thursday night into the weekend, seeing who gets to come to Minnesota, because that's when I will do a deep dive on these players and sit down and look at them and give my thoughts and opinions on them. There's just so many people to look at in the pre-draft process. It gets a little daunting sometimes to try to do all that.
It really does. There's so many options, so many different ways things could go. And I think it all boils down to, at the top of the draft, how this falls with the quarterbacks. And I know that people are so tired of hearing about all the quarterback story, but really it's going to determine how everything else falls. A team that needs a corner or an offensive lineman early, and if they have a question mark at quarterback and instead they take a passer, it could really help the Vikings by helping those prospects fall to them. Mm-hmm. So you really got to watch and observe and know your team needs, and watch as everything goes by, and just really enjoy the draft for what it is, because it really is an experience. We got a question here in the chat from Jason Tavares saying, do you think Lamar Jackson will go in the top 20? I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say yes. I think Arizona's going to take him.
I think Lamar Jackson is going to fall till almost the end of the second round, when a team is going to trade up to try to get that fifth-year option for him.
You said the end of the second. You mean end of the first?
In the top 20.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Because I do think that he's going to be available. Like, a team's going to want to jump into the end of the first round and grab him, trade up from their second-round pick. But like I said before, there are so many really weird quarterback prospects that I think are really going to surprise people. And let's be honest, who would have thought that Christian Ponder or Jake Locker or some of these other quarterbacks would have been day one selections? And with so many teams needing quarterbacks or having stopgap quarterbacks, looking for their passers of the future behind people that are getting a little older. I mean, if you are the New Orleans Saints, if you are the Giants, you got to be kind of looking for, okay, we got to keep our franchise alive, and we got to find our next talent before we get ready to move on from the next one, so we're not scrambling. You could see teams just moving up and taking quarterbacks to test them out, see what they have, because teams are willing to gamble on quarterbacks more than any other position.
Yeah. Even Arizona, there's no way Arizona is all eggs in the basket on Sam Bradford. They can't be, right?
Well, they do have a backup in Glennon.
Ugh.
Yeah.
God,
still.
Saying that makes me think of the smell of sour milk.
Milk was a bad choice.
It's bad. I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's the biggest enigma of this draft because his numbers didn't fall off from a season removed of him winning the Heisman. He's a little small in frame for my liking, but the kid he's Michael Vick 2.0. And
I would like to see him going from being a Cardinal to a Cardinal. I think that'd be fun.
It'd be a lot of fun. And, like we said earlier this year when we talked about Sam Bradford leaving, he usually plays every other season, so maybe he'll be serviceable this year. The bottom line is, and that's no knock on Sam. You guys know I love Sam Bradford. It's some of these guys are going to be forced to start this year, and I hate that because I think they should all sit at least a year, understand, come and play garbage time, get a feel and see, hey, this game is really fast compared to what I was just playing. But for me, the draft this year, the most interesting are going to be the first 10 picks because there's going to be a shocker somewhere in there. And there's going to be another team jump up in the first 10 picks to get a quarterback. That's without a doubt.
Yeah, Denver's already declared that their pick is up for sale.
And it's going to determine where the running back, Saquon Barkley, who everybody's saying is the next Adrian Peterson, or maybe better, depending on where he goes. And then there's a defensive end, North Carolina kid, Bradley Chubb. He's amazing. He may fall as far as to number 5. So who knows? Based on everybody's got to have a quarterback. So
I thought it was so funny because they were going over the top running back draft prospects of all time. And I think it was Kuiper and McShay were talking about it. And they said, our number 1 draft prospect running back of all time, Adrian Peterson. Our number 2, we didn't quite do so good on, and he went to the Cleveland Browns.
That surprised everybody.
Oh, man. But yeah, he was their number 3, Barkley was. So I'm just glad the Vikings were able to get a little bit of a trade off that, even though they ended up picking Khalil, who didn't stick around. They were smart enough to trade with the Browns to get them up there that one spot to get their running back.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to watch the first round. I don't really care about the mid-round stuff because it's hit or miss. It could be entertaining per team, but no. I'm sorry. The middle of the first round. I'm sorry. I don't want to discredit the parrot.
No.
Yeah.
No animals were harmed during the filming of the show.
All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard do you think Roger Goodell is going to get booed?
12.
So here's what we were talking about earlier.
Especially considering that Dallas has a lot of hate for that man right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys talked about earlier about having people come in the second, third, later rounds, whatever. I never want anyone but Roger Goodell to do the first round because people hate him so much.
Oh, yeah.
So entertaining.
And only recently has he started kind of playing it up, and I love it. I love that he's kind of taking on the heel GM role. As a wrestling fan, it's great.
Yeah. It is kind of awesome.
Soak it in. I just want him kind of do a Finn Balor, kind of, lean back, arms up, and just soak it in.
You should come out to Bobby Roode's theme. Every time.
Oh, it's going to be wonderful. I love the draft because of the theatrics. I don't usually tune into the red carpet stuff beforehand, but it's usually fun to see a lot of the draft cards, a lot of the prospects, and hearing some of the analysts talking about where they think everyone's going to go. Yang Yaj says that Goodell's going to get the Roman Reigns treatment, which is, yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
Fun fact: we were gonna the optional second title of this show was Roman Reigns sucks. So
that is the one that Mr. West came up with.
That was my nomination.
There's no pun. It's just Roman Reigns sucks. So yeah, there you go.
But as we've said here before a couple times, this is going to be such an interesting and fun draft, and we always look forward to this so much because we don't know what's going on. We don't know who's going to land where, and we're going to get some new faces in Vikings jerseys after this, and it's going to be just a lot of fun, so interesting, and I hope that we can get a lot of material up on the Facebook page during the draft after our players are announced to have some kind of interaction there, and not to kind of poke at Mr. Smith here a little bit, but maybe some social media questions?
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely do one of those, maybe. Definitely, maybe.
Just maybe a little bit?
Maybe. We'll see if we like it. I don't know. It's been a while. I have to flirt with it again and see if I like it. No, we'll get those up for you.
We do have Jason Tavade in the chat again saying, are any of you guys planning to watch the greatest Royal Rumble on Friday before the draft? Yes, I am. I ain't missing that.
The card looks super stacked.
It does.
It's gonna have Chris Jericho on it as well too.
Jericho, I believe, got shifted around, right? Did he find another match?
I think he's back in the Rumble.
Because I saw Rusev got put back with Undertaker.
Yes, they're literally gonna bury Rusev.
They are. But that's such an honor to lose to a legend. I mean, I know that the WWE is so predetermined and everything, but when you get put in a high-profile match, like a casket match against The Undertaker on such a big stage pay-per-view, you got to say, man, I've kind of made it a little bit. Which is
Here's what I want to know. Here's what I want to know. Based on the country that they're going to be holding this pay-per-view at, if Brock accidentally breaks Roman Reigns open and he's just bleeding like a stuck pig, are they going to let him out of the country?
I don't know.
What's going to happen with that?
Let's see, it might be too much television for Jason, NFL, WWE. Although if it was an NXT show, I might change my mind. Oh, those NXT takeovers are so good. So good.
Better than WrestleMania. And shorter.
So good. So we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent here, and I kind of wanted to see if we had any last thoughts from our hosts here.
I think John Gruden is going to do something crazy in the draft this year.
That John Gruden, man, I tell you what, he's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
John.
Don't you guys think that, though? His first year back, don't you see Gruden just doing something like, what?
Well, he's already cut a lot of his best players and brought in questionably character guys, so who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the consensus in the chat seems to be like a lot of Vikings fans thinking that the team's going to trade out of the first round, which is very sad for those attending the draft party at US Bank Stadium.
I'd be so pissed.
Especially considering that the only two announced guests so far are Trevor Siemian and Tom Compton. It's not good. Not good at all. Nothing against Trevor Siemian and Tom Compton, but when you say, current Vikings and Vikings legends and those two names get on the list and nothing else so far, it's...
I don't even know what number Trevor Siemian is.
That'd be a little questionable.
Number 3?
3, yeah.
Oh, God.
Is he Jersey 3? I think so.
He is.
He got the Blair Walsh number. He better not mess it up.
How about Tom Compton? Can anyone fill in that trivia fact?
I'm going to guess 64.
I have no idea. Not like I have it in front of me.
I don't know. I have no idea. Nope.
Yeah.
No, I've got nothing. I'm actually going to fly back to the East Coast next week. My son's going to be turning 1 next month, and we'll have the show up for you. Hopefully, I'm free on Tuesday if these guys are good, and we'll break down the draft and get everything rolling for you guys.
79. I wasn't even close.
Samsonite. I was way off.
Who the hell's 64?
Oh, this is good. Who knows who number 64 is? I have no clue.
Oh, the other new offensive lineman, Josh Andrews. Okay.
I didn't know that was a Viking.
I knew it was someone that just got picked up, but I wasn't sure which one.
I'm awful at this game.
Oh, this is not an easy game.
No.
But yeah, watch for social media. We're going to be having some discussions about chats and everything. It's going to be a lot of fun, interesting stuff, I hope. Like we said, new Vikings faces in purple. Good stuff. Go ahead and plug your stuff, guys.
If you like Metallica, follow my band's page, Disposable Ink. We practiced 2 new songs tonight, and it was a lot of fun. Disposable Ink, we're out of El Paso, Texas. We do the Black Album in its entirety. Tonight we practiced Creeping Death and Disposable Heroes, both from 2 of the older albums. It was a lot of fun. I am so excited to start playing shows. And once we do, I'll be posting videos. And
nice.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to be playing music again.
Good stuff. Mr. West, what you got?
I have a movie podcast you can check out. It's called Shut Up, I Like This, where we talk about film. We just got done recording an episode about a horror movie from 97 called The Ugly. It's one of my favorite films that you maybe not have heard of. Otherwise, we're going to be doing Varsity Blues next week.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I don't like that movie.
Oh, Adam.
I've never liked that movie. I don't understand why. I don't like it.
You don't like? I don't want your life. You don't like? Oh man, so many good guys too at the early starts of their career. Who's that? James Caan, and oh man, his tweeter was one of my favorite football characters of all time. I'm excited. I'm going to tune in for that, Kyle. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, we just put our episode that's up this week. We did Wishmaster.
Nice.
Yeah.
Solid.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I got some stuff to plug here, of course. Yeah, I've already plugged the Viking Age on here before, but I'll plug it again. I do want to thank you guys because, again, we are getting amazing numbers on the Viking Age. We did our ranking of the top 15 first-round draft picks in Minnesota Vikings history, and it shook out in an interesting way that Mr. Adam Patrick and I had to really kind of discuss things to figure out where players were going to land, so it was really fun. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. I got my 5 bowl draft predictions up there. I've got the schedule for television and apps and streaming, all that kind of stuff. So go ahead, check all that out on the Viking Age, whether you go to the website or download the app. A lot of good stuff there. Of course, Undead Walking as well. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, we're still talking a lot about the season 8 finale of The Walking Dead, as well as how good Fear the Walking Dead is 2 episodes in. We got the Walking Dead comic book coming out in a little over a week, closer to 2 weeks, but still really good time for the Walking Dead comics with the Commonwealth being introduced and all that kind of stuff. So if you are into the Walking Dead, check out Undead Walking again on the website or the app. Lots of good stuff. Purple People Podcast, I again have not checked to see if we were up on Spotify. I haven't even checked the email to see if we get approved, but we might be there. So if you check it out, it's possible. But we do know that we are on YouTube because that's where we are live, where you can check us out, subscribe, give us thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. You can also check us out iTunes, PodOMatic, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Spreaker, so many places. And with all those combined, we get a pretty solid listening base of fans listening even throughout the off season. So thank you everyone that takes the time to listen to us, review us, share our podcast, join us, even discuss it, comment on our social media channels or whatever. It's all just so awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, be sure to tune in next week because, not only will we be talking about whoever the Vikings draft, but it is our 300th episode, which I think is pretty cool and kind of a big deal. And so I think we're going to be doing some fun stuff at the beginning of that one.
And we're going to be revealing our number 1 Vikings of all time.
Number 1 Vikings of all time, 300 episode, draft
That
picks.
wasn't even by chance either. That was just complete luck, and I am so happy that happened that way.
It all works out so well. Mm-hmm. I know it's past midnight for a lot of you guys in the chat, so thank you so much for joining us, and we're sorry for doing such a late episode, but like we said, we really wanted to get this out so that we could be fresh to go for the draft and not do 2 episodes just almost back-to-back. So thank you for understanding and joining us. We really appreciated it. Mm-hmm. And stay classy, Minnesota.